Hello and welcome to the March Supper Club. We are so glad to be continuing our journey through the Gospels, basically, choosing texts that are paired with a poem. So scripture and poetry as our journey through the life of Jesus. The month of March, we are talking about Jesus and Pilate, the governor Pilate. We're kind of jumping ahead into the beginning of Holy Week because March will be in Lent. Lent will start March 5th. But this is a great story about Jesus in conversation with the governor of that region. And in April, we will jump ahead and end our Supper Club series with one of the accounts of the resurrection.
It'll be Easter time.
It'll be Easter time. I think it's been a great series.
Yeah, it's been fun for us to do it. And we're hearing great things from you.
We are. We're hearing really good things. One of the questions we did get a couple of times, actually, in the last couple of weeks was, the question is, how do we read poetry? Some people are intimidated by poetry and intimidated by reading the Bible, this
Scripture
idea
too.
of we don't get it. So I know you have some ideas on a good way into reading poetry, but also it works for reading Scripture.
Yeah, for both. Yeah, Scripture. So three things, please add to this. So three things just to keep in mind. First is the importance of reading Scripture and poetry aloud. And to do it relatively slowly. You don't need to rush through these texts. And as you're hearing it, it's an auditory experience as well. So listening for the musicality of the words or the phraseology of a poem. What are the sort of the ways that you're hearing these words? That's the first one. So make sure you're reading these out loud. The second one is around, and we've been kind of suggesting this as we've been going along, is how do you see and hear metaphors or images or patterns, especially with poetry? There's often patterns that are emerging with the text. So just looking for what are these, sometimes it might be colors, it might be images that are coming. And the last thing that I would offer is that we're not trying to figure out the understanding, or its deep meaning. It's like we're in relationship with these words. So what's the emotions that are arising from what you're hearing? How do these phrases or these words or images, how are they connecting with our own lived experience? There's no way to figure out the absolute meaning, either of Scripture or of poetry.
Totally. I think it's permission giving to say, I don't get it, but it's okay not to get it, to say, well, what am I noticing? What is it that's interesting? And with Scripture, who are the characters? I think really lean in, and also with poetry. Who is the speaker? Who's the narrator? What's happening? What verbs are active in the text? And so just to be curious about it and to release yourself from the sense of, I wonder what the poet meant.
Right, exactly.
Wonder what the gospel writer meant. Like, just hold back from that and be in relationship with it and hear each other's interpretation. So in some ways it's permission giving to not have to know it all.
We hope that helps.
I hope so too. Okay, so this text, we're taking this story of Jesus and Pilate at the beginning of Holy Week, the beginning of the week that he journeys toward the cross. This story of Jesus and Pilate, it takes place in 3 Gospels, so Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John. All 4. Yes.
I think it's all 4.
All 4 of them. There you go. I was thinking just 3. But this is an important story. That's what that tells us, that this is an important encounter between Jesus and the governor Pilate. So a little bit about the text itself. Pilate was not Jewish. He was the Roman governor appointed by the Emperor Tiberius for that region. And the story takes place at the festival of Passover in Jerusalem. So Jesus is there, and the Jewish leaders, the Jewish chief priests, the elders of the synagogues were there. And so this was a heavy hitting environment at that time with the Jewish community. So two institutions are operating there
at the same time. Yeah.
That's right. So the Roman Empire and that institution of power, and then the religious leaders, the Jewish religious institution is also operating. So and it's interesting in this story, they are in conversation.
Yeah. Back and forth.
Yeah.
They go to Herod, who's the Jewish ruler, and then back to Pilate. It's yes, you can see both dynamics happening.
Going on, and so to really pay attention to that. And interesting, the custom that this story alludes to or references, this really odd custom that the Roman Empire has, that Pilate has to the festival, at the festival, to the religious leaders, of releasing a prisoner. During the festival, the custom was to release a prisoner. And so that's what's kind of taking place in this conversation.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, that's good.
Okay. I'll read the text and then we'll just exchange some reflections.
Yeah.
Okay, this is from Matthew chapter 27, verses 11 through 24. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You have said so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he made no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?" But Jesus gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor wondered greatly. Now at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd one prisoner whom they wanted. And they had then a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" For he knew that it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much over him today in a dream." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the people to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ?" They all said, "Let him be crucified." And he said, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water, and with his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." It's powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful story.
What a scene. Yeah.
What strikes you? Couple of thoughts.
Couple of things. One is the judgment seat. The Pilate's sitting on this really just in this reading, I was like, he's sitting in the. I can enter into the scene where he's sitting at this kind of maybe throne-like seat and overseeing what's happening here with the crowd. I'm struck by Barabbas is notorious. Like he's a famous prisoner here, and I'm just curious about that. Don't know what to make of it yet, but it's just and finally,
I think he's like Charles Manson. Like the level of
that level
what?
Of, yeah,
it was
notoriety.
A little shock. Yeah,
That's
shock
great.
value. Yep.
And then finally, I was thinking, I love especially your inflection, which is why reading scripture out loud, you're like, why? Like
what
you
did
can
he
hear
do?
Pilate like, why? What is happening? He hasn't done anything. And so I'm really like leaning into that. Like Pilate knows. And he's managing this crowd. Anyways, I was intrigued by that too.
Yeah.
So
What
how about
evil
you?
has he done? Yeah. I'm struck this time on how silent Jesus is. And how frustrating that must have been for Pilate, that he gives no single answer to even a single charge, so that the governor wondered greatly. So that in another rendition it says that he was greatly amazed. Like, why was Jesus so silent? Or maybe Jesus thought, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, it's already decided.
Yeah.
This is a done deal. And the other, one of the other reflections is, Pilate says, Pilate knew that it was out of envy that they, the religious leaders, had delivered him up.
Yeah.
Like, he already knew what was going on there. It was almost like he and Jesus were in on it. They got that this. He knew what was going to happen here, and so he knew that they were envious of him, and he wasn't going to.
And he was gaining nothing. That line, I was getting nowhere with these people.
Nowhere.
Like,
and a riot was starting.
A riot was starting. So here you go. Yeah, it's on you. All right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that this custom that they release a prisoner, and it seems so Roman Empire, perhaps, to do that. It's like a little pressure valve release to keep the peace, right? This is Pax Romana. You keep the peace by just giving the people a little bit what they want at the festival.
Little bone
yeah,
here.
Sure, you can.
And then we pacify them because. Because I mean, so many of these prisoners are likely political prisoners, because they've been, the zealots are pushing against Roman Empire. So, anyways.
There's a woman present in this text, and that's the wife of Pilate. And she has a really significant place in this story. But why don't we switch to our cool poem?
To the poem, which will highlight that. So our poet is Nina Kosman. She was born in the Soviet Union, and her family emigrated to the United States in 1973. She, in her biography, she has kind of generations and generations of kind of navigating oppressive regimes, including the Nazis and Stalin. And so that comes out in some of her poetry in terms of power and how power gets navigated. She is also an editor of an East-West literary journal that's bilingual in Russian and in English. She's published 9 or 10 books, and she's also an artist. So
accomplished.
Yeah. So here is her poem, Pilate's Wife. I don't know who that man is, but I know when I saw him, my migraine lifted off like a feather, and some black birds spelled a message in the air of my dream. And if you don't believe in omens, and don't tell me you do, I know you don't. They still are there. And since I'm chained to you, yes, I repeat, I'm chained to you. You can at least obey the birds and listen. Have nothing to do with that just man, husband. Oh, the last word, husband. Yes, there's so much here.
Yeah. So backing up then, Pilate's wife from the text, it says, besides, while Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much over him today in a dream. And then she's not mentioned again. But then Kosman takes this poem and fills out what she's
her
thinking.
Experience. Yeah, right.
What else? What do you
Well, again, unfortunately, no name for her, just Pilate's wife. She's not even in the scene. She's not in the room. So she is sending word to her husband. I think in this poem, not to over-explain, but you see real issues of gender power and empirical power happening here. And the other one is, I'm so curious about the suffering she described. What is it like for her? What's the suffering she's experiencing? Is it is it physical? Is it emotional? She's seeing what's happening as well in this dynamic with Jesus. And I'm leaning in. I want to talk with her and say more about your experience and what you're seeing. How about you?
Yeah, well, this whole poem obviously is first person, so the pilot's wife, is the narrator, and it's to her husband. So maybe this is the message that that was
imagine
sent,
what's sent
that
over.
she is sending.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I don't know who that man is, but I know. So she's had an experience with Jesus. I don't know who that man is, but I know when I saw him, my migraine lifted like a feather, like this healing.
Yeah.
Anyways, like her experience of this, and then, there's so much in here. There's so much in here in just so few words,
it's such
so
a
few
brief,
lines.
yeah, right.
I know you don't. They still are there, and since I'm chained to you, yes, I repeat, I'm chained to you. Yeah. Dang.
Yeah, like I'm in this subjugated
like owned.
role. That's right, and yet, she's still claiming her voice in the midst of that, and I love it. And this idea that wisdom comes from not just the philosophical or the political, but these omens and these symbols of the birds, and as often in mythology, a source of wisdom, and her wisdom as a woman in this empire, I think, where the alternative sources of wisdom is great.
So her message came to her husband, Pilate, but it didn't have an impact. And she says, have thou nothing to do with that just man, husband. Or maybe him saying, I am innocent of this man's blood. Like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Anyways, we know we've gone a little bit long on this, but this is a great story and it is a great poem.
Yeah.
So we hope that you will take time. And if you really feel moved, look up this story in all four of the Gospels.
You'll see
And
the
just see
difference.
there's some nuances in the story and what the exchange was between Pilate and Jesus.
Yeah. We hope you have a great time around supper and enjoying each other.
Yeah.
So have a great.
Let us know.
Okay.
Have a good evening.